New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. What if you had a place to return to every day for peace, clarity, and connection? The New Thought Ministry of Prayer offers live morning and evening prayer, along with a growing library you can access anytime. This is a space for reflection, renewal, and real spiritual practice, rooted in the understanding that something greater is already alive within you. You are welcome here. Join us live or watch anytime. The New Thought Ministry of Prayer, part of the New Thought Media Network. Come, take a moment for what matters most.
Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here, and it is time for the Inclusive Church. I'd love it if you would just say hi in the chat or in the comment section, depending on which platform you are on, so that I know I'm not here alone. But actually, I can already see I'm not here alone because I can see you over there in different platforms. Some of you are on YouTube and several of you are on Facebook. And so, yes, feel free to say hello. And if you want to add where you're viewing from, that's great. So every week on the Inclusive Church, we spend a little bit of time just recommitting to creating spiritual communities where, even though in New Thought we teach oneness, that we understand that oneness does not mean sameness. And it's important for us to be very intentional in what we do and how we do it if we want to be able to attract and serve of the widest variety of people in the communities we live in, right? That are multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-generational. Inclusion doesn't happen just automatically. It requires us to pay attention to what we're doing and to choose carefully. So today the theme is part one of a focus on artificial intelligence, AI. I was in a conversation about maybe 6 weeks ago, 4 to 6 weeks ago, with someone who said, basically, I'm summarizing, but they had taken a position that they didn't want to use AI. They were concerned about the many, many ways that people have used AI to bypass or to eliminate the work of real life individuals. and that they felt it was not something they wanted to even do any basics with. And so it just got me to thinking about I'm not always an early adopter, but I am always thinking about whatever the new technology is, how can I use it to further that which I am working on? So I'm not someone who is a AI or artificial intelligence guru. I am not someone who is going to tell you you should be using it all day, every day. But this idea of building and sustaining an inclusive spiritual community does bring up the question. If I am, or if my church is serious about reaching out to communities or identity groups of people who we are not familiar with, who we have not served in the past, but maybe a good example, one of the churches that I did a fair amount of work with a couple of years ago, the community around their property, the community around the church building over the years had become 80% Hispanic Latino. And the church had been existing in that location for almost 50 years. And when they started in that community, it was like 99% white middle class. So now the community is still middle class, but it's a huge percentage, like over 65%, 70% Hispanic Latino, and a large amount of that population is bilingual. And so there are things they want to do to engage with the community, but they knew they didn't understand some of the cultural norms. They didn't have very many people, like you could count on two hands the number of existing community members who spoke basic Spanish. Like they were not completely fluent, but they could have some basic conversations or provide directions. They couldn't teach or speak, like give a class or speak at a service and do their talk in Spanish. So they, they didn't even have a dozen people who had the language skills that might help to build trust. And so we did a variety of things. And I want to say that I think the efforts that were taken really did make a positive difference. But I'm thinking if I were working with them today, how might I use AI, or how might I encourage them to use artificial intelligence in order to create the kind of trust and to create the bonds that would grow their community even more. And so, again, I am not like selling you here's a package step by step of what to do. But over the last 8 months, maybe 8 to 10 months, I have learned a lot about and want to encourage you too to begin to learn more about how you can use artificial intelligence in both an ethical way, but in a targeted way to achieve your existing goals. Your existing goals related to marketing, your existing goals related to membership growth, your existing goals related to education, your existing goals related to community service, your existing goals and priorities. So, one of the things that is really important is that you have some clarity about who your target audience is and why. So it might be you have a primarily virtual ministry and you realize that you want to do some programming that really attracts young people, young adults between the ages of 21 and 30. Okay, that's great. But that means you need to be willing to do some research if you don't already have a core group of young adults in that age group. And so, there are non-AI things that you could do, right? You could connect with a local college or university and enlist or get input and feedback from young adults in that age group. You could invite some of them to help you design programming um, that they know would attract either themselves or their friends about how to utilize spiritual principles in their lives based on the challenges and the goals and ambitions of people in that particular age group. It's always great if you can have one-on-one conversations and meet people in real time. You can also use AI to do some surface level research around what are the challenges and what research proves or demonstrates that. One of the big lessons I've learned in the last year as I've been growing my trust in AI is it's one thing to ask the question, like you might ask any search engine, what are the issues that young adults between the ages of 21 and 30 are facing? And it's going to give me an answer. But if I'm using AI more fully, I might ask that question, but in the prompt, I'm also going to say, provide me with the resources used to provide this information and outline it for me in a way that I can use it for a discussion with the leadership at my church. So it's going to give me the information, but because of the prompt I use, it's also going to organize it in a way that I can facilitate a meeting about it. And it's going to give me the resources or some resources that allow me to know this isn't random information and I can go to those resources, those books, those reports, those research firms, and look for more information. So your AI prompt is more than just an internet search through a browser. You want to ask it to format it in a way that you can use it, or it might be what I just described, or another example could be, let's say that one of the target groups that we wanted to increase in your community. Let's say that you are looking for a demographic that is young Black families or parents with school-aged children who happen to also be African American. And so there are, again, depending on how you do the prompt, it's what are the demographics in my city or in this county for African Americans with 2 or more children. and what parts of town do they live in? What parts of the county are they prevalent in? And I might ask, is there a pattern related to careers? Or I might ask, is there a pattern related to employment? And part of that would not just be to assess income, not that so much as, oh wow, if I see there are a large percentage that the employment is in education or in healthcare, that's going to help me determine places that I might reach out to reach the adults that I'm trying to reach. And then in the prompt, I'm going to also be very specific. Am I doing this for just brainstorming? Or since I know I'm doing it for marketing, I'm going to say, summarize, this information. And then I'm going to use AI by having the prompt go on to say, please recommend a social media campaign that will target and reach this group. I want I want 24 social media posts and suggestions for where to post, where and when to post. Because the advantage of AI is that it's going to take all those different factors and it's going to give me an action plan or an outline step by step of what I can do. Now, my experience has been if I use AI for general social media posts in a situation like that, I'm going to need to edit the social media posts, right? So if I were doing this for my home spiritual community, CSL Dallas, I would be putting that in there, somewhere in there, that social media posts that are in alignment with the culture and tone and voice of CSL Dallas, because AI can reach out on the internet and find that. Now, if I'm doing just a generic campaign, I did this, I don't know if it was 2024 or 2025. I decided that from a spiritual place and for a spiritual community, that I was going to help them do a post every day during Pride Month. And so I did use AI to help with that because I wanted leaders and achievers who identified as LGBTQ plus in one of those categories. And I wanted historical contributions. So I didn't have to edit those so much because they weren't specific to spirituality. We did some things in the design that then made it clear that a spiritual community was posting this. And in the text with each social media post, there was always something of, you are welcome here, at this community, or please, go to our website and find out more about this spiritual community. We'd like to be your spiritual home. Things like that were in the text. But having social media come up with 40, we did need 40, but we wanted some extras. 40 social media posts featuring achievers and leaders who identify as LGBTQ plus. It saved hours and hours of manual researching that. So you absolutely want to be clear about who your target is and why you're targeting them. And that means you have probably already done some research, right, about who you are trying to add to your community, or what group or groups you're trying to expand within your community. Another way that you can use AI to really support you, especially from the perspective of marketing first and then teaching second, is using the graphics features. All of the major AI engines or platforms now have really, really good graphics design and development, as long as you give it good information, right? Or enough information that your graphics then reflect your church's color schemes or wording that you would use that is in alignment with your own community. And I had a little conflict around this. I'll just be honest, because I do like to go to the stock photo sites where individual photographers or artists are submitting their work, and either submitting it and allowing it to be used with an attribution of their name or their website, or where I can purchase it and buy a license, a royalty license to use that photo, because I really like supporting the work of real human beings who are creative and who are providing resources. And it felt like I was beating my head against the wall, because for all the things I would be doing, I would be looking for graphic images or photos that had people from different ethnic groups all in the same photo. Like I could find photos that were Black families, or I could find some photos that were Latino or Asian, and I could definitely find, the majority of photos were white men or white women. But even in putting in a prompt like diversity or multicultural. Typically, if I would put in multicultural, it would just give me, and there's 6 people in the photo, it would give me 6 people who were people of color from one particular identity group, versus having people from multiple cultural groups in the same photo in an office or at a church or in the park or right. It was really frustrating because there were so few options, and maybe half of the options I could find, everybody else was using them as well. So in using AI, I was able to begin to practice with different prompts so that I could have, 2 people who were of Asian descent and one person who is using a wheelchair, and another 3 people who were of African descent, and 3 people who were white in different age groups. And I still don't have a huge collection, but in putting in different prompts, different ways, I found I can create the imagery that is in alignment with what we say about being multicultural or multi-ethnic. And it doesn't mean that I always do that. There are plenty of times for when I will use an image, that is only reflecting one specific group. But in the course of a full class or a full presentation, then I will make sure that the graphics or the images that I use will reflect different groups of people for different slides or for different pages in the book. Marjorie, it's such a great question. Do you recommend that our work be cited? And so if we're using AI, this is a really hot conversation right now because there are people who are like, yes, but I put in all the prompts and then I tweaked it and I did 16 rounds of edits. And so it really is my work. And sometimes I do that if I really have, like, for example, well, this is a great example, Marjorie, and you'll know why. So I am teaching a class, and I wanted a benediction that I would use for the entire 5 weeks of the class. And so I drafted the benediction, and then I used AI to create a slide and a poster, like a flyer, that had the benediction. And I had already put in the color scheme and the design elements that I wanted for this entire class. And so I don't do attribution for those. I don't do an attribution that those design elements were designed using AI in general. But on the other hand, if I'm doing an ebook and some of the research, maybe a third of the research, I had ideas and I made up the prompts, but I used AI to actually research more and then give me more information. Then for situations like that, especially if it's something that's going to be printed, a workbook, an ebook, then usually either in the acknowledgments or in the introduction, I will add a sentence or two that acknowledges that some of the research or some of the editing or some of the research that went into making this was used, or I'm trying to think of the actual language that I love, which I can't remember. That's why I have it written down in a file somewhere. But basically that AI was used in the development of this content. And then usually I'll do a second or third sentence that says, however, it was all, verified, or here are some additional resources where you can verify the information. And I think that many people don't do that. And it's really challenging because, especially if it's something that they don't know much about and they would not be able to answer questions. And so in our churches, if we're using AI to do research about markets that we're going to go after, or if we're using it to create an entire campaign, then I think, there are places and there are ways to acknowledge that it was supported with the help of AI. That question of, do you recommend that our work be cited and that we refer to AI as part of the delivery? I do believe that 5 years from now, everybody will just assume it's AI, and I'm watching to see how that evolves. But the one thing I want to be sure to say for all of us is, an AI tells you every time you search for something, there's a disclaimer. AI can make mistakes. Please verify information. And I have had a couple of students in classes like put in a pretty simple prompt and AI gives them brilliant information. The problem is the reason I could tell it was AI was not only by the formatting of it, but also the fact that there were glaring errors. And so please, if you are going to use AI, especially for research, or especially for, let's say you want to put out an ebook. Let's say you want to put out an ebook on providing spiritual support to people who are going through divorce, random subject. And as you are doing it and collecting the information, you do want to look at, let's say, their affirmations. There's a section in your ebook, and you went to you went to AI and said, my ebook has 10 chapters, 10 sections, and I want an affirmation for each section. Well, you want to check those to make sure they're affirmations, or that I want a spiritual encouragement for each section, and here are the 10 section titles. Well, if it gives you quotes, you want to verify that that actually is a quote from the person. Sometimes it'll just give you quotes and it won't give you names, and so you want to ask in your prompt, give me quotes and the author of each quote. And sometimes I'll say, and links to things they have written, because I want to include that as additional resources at the back of the ebook. But I also do it because I want to be able to go double check. Did they actually, where did they actually write that? Or when did they say it? So we do have to do our due diligence with using AI, but it can cut out, 2/3 of your research time and give you a place to start. So just a few more tips or ideas for you using AI. Of course, you want to use it in order to reach specific targets. What are the decision-making norms in a certain culture? Or one of the ones that I've used or done in the last 6 months is I was giving a talk about supporting people after the death of a loved one. And it dawned on me that, what might be common culture in the United States, in the US, we have people from so many different places around the world and so many different ethnic groups. And so I used AI to give me bereavement rituals in different ethnic and cultural groups. And I had done some research around this probably 15 years ago, related to when I was working with a large hospital system. And we were, coaching and creating some education for hospital employees, for healthcare workers, around what to expect. And when a patient dies, that different families would react in different ways in the hospital. And there were things that really were very practical. So I already had some background knowledge, but when I used AI to give me bereavement rituals, I still needed to go and verify from different points of view before I was ready to share that. So AI can be a helpful tool. It can limit your research time. It can shortcut some of your visual design element time, but we still have the responsibility to check out and confirm the information that we use. So what I think I'll do next week is actually come with some examples of specific prompts that you can use that will give you information that can be helpful for you in being more inclusive in your spiritual community. And I also want to spend a little bit of time just on this question of AI stepping in to do spiritually grounded coaching or practice. So that's what we'll be talking about next week. But for today, that is going to be our show. What we are talking about is the use of AI in order to support your commitment to being more inclusive of people from different identity groups. My name is Tracy Brown, and I am here and look for you to be here with me next Tuesday or every Tuesday at noon Mountain Time. That's it for today. See you again soon.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.
There is a presence ready to meet you here. Join the New Thought Ministry of Prayer live every day, 8:15 a.m. and 8:15 p.m. Mountain Time. Enter a field of intention where prayer is spoken and something deeper is revealed. Our professional prayer partners stand with you in truth, in love, in possibility. Bring your request live or share it anytime at ntmedia.org/prayer. Come as you are and step into what is already becoming. We look forward to praying with you.